Welcome. Is that how it typically goes? Someone comes up and introduces themselves and says hi, and you look at them with a blank stare? Okay, good. I want to apologize in advance for the little cough I have. I'm just recovering from 2 months of bronchitis. So this is the best day I've had, so hoorah. Before I can talk to you, like any relationship, I need to know a little about you. I need to know who I'm talking to. So who wants to volunteer their profession and what brings them here today? The brave beginner. Okay, so you're an autism aide in high school and you also have a son on the spectrum. Very good. Any others? Very good. A few more. Wow, a brave bunch. Okay, show of hands, teachers. Okay, down, paraprofessionals. Okay. Any mental health professionals? Good, I can just bash them all day long then. OTs, occupational therapists, speech pathologists. Okay. Individuals on the spectrum themselves. Cool. Now, before we really get into it, I would like to establish some agreements between us. Is that okay? First and foremost, this is not going to be a monologue, it is going to be a dialogue. Because the only way we can learn from each other is through conversation. Would you agree? How many relationships are effective where one person does all the talking? Okay? That's a dictatorship. It is not a partnership. So for the purposes of today, in order for real learning to take place, I want to hear from you as much as you hear from me, because there is no doubt a collective wisdom in this room that everybody needs to benefit from. I come here today to bring you my experience, my answers, not the answers, my answers. I've lived my life. I've not lived yours. So in order to best benefit you, to provide value, to be an asset to you, I need to know what your lives entail. I need to know what your challenges are. You all have a handout before you. But the important thing to keep in mind about this is this was created without your input. This was not created with your lives in mind because I don't know your life yet. So we could cover all of this or none of it. It's entirely up to you. Because what matters most today is not what we cover. What matters is what you discover. What new strategies, what new insights you learn today to benefit and greatly improve your personal situations for your clients, for your children, and for yourselves. So in order for this to work, you must not be shy. If you have a question, ask it. If you have a comment, make it. And since I am speaking only for myself and my own experience, if you don't agree at any time with anything I say, challenge me. Because there's an opportunity for me to learn from you. Because are we all living a cookie-cutter existence? So no doubt in your lives there are things that I haven't encountered before. I want to learn from you and they want to learn from you. So please speak up. Please share. Because there is not one statement in this room today that's going to be made that is going to be considered stupid. Because it comes from your heart, your life, your experience. Therefore, it is sincere. It is valid. So please share it. Can we agree to this? Okay. First question. Who is the most important and influential person in your life? Feel free to respond, by the way. That is one of our agreements. Yes? My dad. Your dad. Why? He taught you unconditional love. How does somebody teach that? Okay, he modeled it for you. He demonstrated it. He lived it. Anyone else? The most important person in your life. Please tell me you're not surrounded by mediocrity. There has to be somebody in there that's influential. Yes. Your mother, why? Okay. Would you agree that in order for unconditional love, caring, forgiveness, to be accepted by you, you have to agree that you're worthy of it. So technically, the most important, influential person in your life is you. You have other people around you that are modeling for you, that are showing you how life can be, how you can be treated. But ultimately, you make the decision whether to take it in, whether to live by it, agree with it, and in turn put it out there in the world. And that's whether you're on the spectrum or not. By virtue of being a human being, you are the most influential person in your life. You are the one that is most responsible for the course of your life. In fact, everybody I work with, I tell them you really only need to master 3 areas in your life to be successful. So that nice big thick book you got in front of you, the library you have at home, if you read through any of that, I want you to filter it through these, what I call the 3 core competencies of life. Because if you can master these 3 areas, you're going to do pretty darn well for yourself. You ready for them? The first of the 3 is responsibility. Now, typically when I ask people, what does responsibility mean? They would tell me, remember the interactive part I was talking about? When you think about teaching responsibility, it's important to be responsible. You have to accept responsibility. What does that mean? Accountability. What else? Following through. Keeping your word. If you say you're going to do it, do it. Typically when I encounter people who espouse the value of teaching responsibility, I ask them, what does that mean? Well, somebody has to be responsible for their mistakes. When they've done something wrong, they have to own it. So the examples that are given to me is people need to own, speak up, and embrace all of their errors, their mistakes, their shortcomings. And in other cases, they need to accept blame. When you mess up, you need to own it. How many of you really want to embrace that? Any of yourselves thinking about it now? Remember a time where you encouraged someone else to take responsibility that way? We're all learning here today. None of us are making mistakes or blowing it or messing up somebody else's lives. We're here to introspect, reflect, and learn from our experiences. So anybody want to own up to that? I had my day as a parent where I was yelling at my kids. Hope you're proud of yourself. We all have those moments, right? We're human beings that have less than perfect moments. All of us. That's one way we're exactly the same. So if you own up to it, you are the brave one. You are the courageous one that says, I'm human. Yeah, I did it, but I can do better. Ultimately, what responsibility is the ability to respond. The ability to take proactive steps in your life, proactive action to create a specific result. That's what responsibility is. It's about creating something. It's not about destruction. So when you want someone to take blame, to admit what they did wrong, you're asking them to look at a situation where some kind of destruction took place. That is not what responsibility is. Responsibility is about what you created. What makes it a mistake is because you didn't like the result. But they created a result nonetheless. Would you agree? You're always creating, whether it's the result you want or not. So what if you looked at it through that lens? Kid spills an entire box of cereal on the floor. That was a predictable cause and effect result. Was it a mistake? Something worthy of shaming and blaming? Or is it something worthy of stepping back and looking at, wow, how'd you do that? You took some proactive action, some steps, and look what you created. Case in point, this actually took place with my now 10-year-old. I think he was 7 at the time. He went to go get cereal for a snack, didn't realize the top was open and it was too high, he couldn't see it. He reached in the cabinet, tipped it back toward himself, and the entire box emptied on the floor. He looked at me like I was about to bite his head off. And I frankly asked him, what happened there? He looked at me with a shaky voice and he says, I spilled the whole thing on the floor. So I asked him, what are you going to do now? Clean it up? How are you going to do that? We'll get the broom and the dustpan. Yeah, where are they? Oh, I'll go find them. Okay, I'll wait here. He went and found him. He's still looking at me like waiting for the attack to come. And he begins sweeping things up. I said, is it working? Yeah. He gets about halfway through and he looks at me and says, can I still eat some of this? I said, no, it's dirty. You can find something else. This one isn't very dirty. No, please, just clean it up and put it in the garbage. So he cleaned it all up very well, found another snack, and sat at the table. And I said, how'd that go? Good. Did it work out? Yeah. It wasn't the way you wanted things to go, was it? No. But isn't it great that you knew what to do about it once it did? Yeah. Got a big grin on his face and started eating his snack. Now, who was proactive in that scene? Anyone else? Was I proactive? You think maybe I was looking to create a specific experience for my son, as opposed to being reactive, having an impulsive emotional response that came solely from my place of inconvenience. Something I spent hard-earned money on was spilled all over the floor. What were you doing? What were you thinking? Use your brain. That would be an impulsive, emotional, reactive response, as opposed to proactive, which means I chose my response. Responsibility, ability to respond however I darn well choose. Because I want my son to have an experience of his own competence, his own ability to solve problems. I don't want to sit there and simply encourage him to feel bad about a problem that exists. That's responsibility from the parental standpoint. Now, for those of you who spoke up initially saying that your parents taught you unconditional love, taught you forgiveness, maybe they taught you how to treat somebody with respect, those are people that parent deliberately, purposefully, responsibly. And that's just the first core competence. And we're going to be using this as a foundation throughout our entire discussion today. Now, it just so happens that the core competencies all begin with R. So we'll be discussing the 3 R's of life today. Now, we're all familiar with the 3 R's academically, yes? What are they? Reading, writing, and arithmetic? Actually, in my experience, they're read, remember, and regurgitate. Because we're living under the era of the All Children Left Behind Act, yes? That's all about standardized testing. That's all about spitting back rote information that really doesn't focus on solving the problems of life. And for kids on the spectrum, this is not foundational for life. Having straight A's. Anybody ever sit through an IEP meeting? Your child's grades are so good, what are you complaining about? Because my kid can't talk to the person in front of them. You can't self-advocate. If you can't form relationships, you will not succeed in this life. You cannot have the best grades in the world and think your entire life will be existing in a vacuum. Without social strategies, you will not succeed, period. The second R of the core competencies is resourcefulness. So when I throw that word out there, what does that mean to you? Who said that? Being inventive and getting your needs met. Okay. Any others? Resourcefulness means being able to look at a situation, being able to know what your resources are, what resources you need, and how to go about getting them. In many cases, spectrum or not, somebody has a belief in their mind where they insist they must know everything. They must be the one to solve the problem. If they can't solve the problem, the solution does not exist. Know anyone like that? And don't say every guy I've ever met. Anyone ever met a person like that? where they deliberately limit the resources they believe are available to themselves. And therefore, they limit their options to solve problems. They limit their options for growth. They've basically chosen to be stuck because they deny themselves resources. One of the best examples of somebody that is resourceful is somebody who embraces their own ignorance and can look at a situation and say, I don't know. This is good. Because if I don't know, chances are somebody else does. Now I have the opportunity to network, to go online, to ask the person next to me, do you have the information I need to solve this problem? Now I know what I didn't know before. I've grown, hurrah. That's resourcefulness. Being able to realize and believe that the resources exist. All you need to do is find them. This kind of frustrates my kids. Because every time they ask me a question, I say, that's a good question. How are you going to get the answer? Never mind. No, that's a good question. What are you going to do? You can read a book. You can go online. You can call somebody you know. But in this day and age, there is no excuse for not knowing. The information's there. But what I need to teach them is that the answers exist somewhere else besides me. Because as a parent, the tendency is to want to be useful, to want to be an asset to your child, to feel good about yourself when your child comes to you. You're able to help them, support them, nurture them, and make them completely dependent on you at the exclusion of others. You ever see that happening? It's human. Parents do this. It's not a fault. It's human. The important thing is to become aware of this tendency. If you find yourself in this pattern, you're creating dependence instead of independence or interdependence. But when you realize the ultimate goal for your child is resourcefulness, teaching them where the resources exist, then your role is to require them to be resourceful. Not tell them they have to be resourceful. Well, you better take responsibility now because someday you're going to have to be responsible. And then you go back to enabling them. The only way to teach these things is to require it. How do you require responsibility? Now, by telling them they need to be responsible, by putting them in situations where they must be responsible. Anybody here not make a choice today? Ever wake up and say, I refuse to make decisions today. I just won't do it. If you are making decisions, you are being responsible. If you are solving problems, you are being resourceful. There's no way to not put your kids in those situations. The important thing is to be conscious of it, deliberate about it, so that every one of those moments is teachable, so they can take something away from it, something they can use, as opposed to doing it all unconsciously and not realizing that they're actually learning and growing. Okay? Third R, resilience. Now, when you hear that word, what does that mean? It's a new word for everyone? What does resilience mean to you? Yes. Bounce back from anything. No matter how many times you get knocked down, get back up. Anybody here not able to do that? Anybody here able to do that? Come on, every hand needs to be up right now. Everybody in this room right now is here today, whatever age you are, because you have survived and overcome everything that's ever happened to you. You are resilient, which means, the old saying goes, fall down 8 times, get up 9. If you look at your entire life, you realize that your entire story is about getting knocked down and getting back up. Having your feelings hurt and healing. Having a failure, a misstep, an unintended outcome, however you want to frame it, and getting past it. Not knowing something and then learning it. Everybody in this room succeeds, gets stronger, gets more intelligent, gets more resourceful, is more resilient. So anybody says, oh, I can't do it. I just don't know how. I'm unable to. Baloney. Your entire life story is evidence to the contrary. Everyone here is resilient. I'm celebrating my 24th year cancer-free. I found out at 35 years of age that I was somewhere on the autism spectrum, and my oldest child was on the spectrum. Now I got 3 on the spectrum. Resourcefulness is not about saying, oh, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. The I don't know what to do is the golden statement. Because the next step is, I need to figure out how. Because am I so special in this world that I'm the only one this has ever happened to? That I must now reinvent the wheel? Or is there a possibility that this is a shared experience with many people and there are resources out there? I simply need to find them. And lo and behold, I was right. There were resources out there. I simply needed to keep asking the question until I got the answers I wanted. Resilience demonstrates that no matter how hard you get hit, no matter how hard you get knocked down, you can get back up. But it's not like, ta-da! It's not like a somersault. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes getting back up is incremental. Sometimes you stumble a little bit, but you still get back up. Trust me, surviving cancer is not about taking a pill and getting up and going on with your life. Anybody else here have that same experience? Know somebody that did? Anybody else have a child on the spectrum that at any given day you say, I don't know if my child's going to grow, and yet when you look back, compared to where your child was versus where they are now, you say, wow, look how far we've come. Even though sometimes it happens in little bits, it's still happening. It's not going to be like the flower in the garden where you plant it the next day, you can see, oh, look at the bud is already there. Not everybody grows that fast, but it does happen. The most important thing to understand about the 3 R's, besides the fact that you already do it, that you're already mastering it to a certain degree, is if you really embrace these, do them deliberately every single day and proactively. You master these 3 R's and nothing in this world can stop you, no matter what label somebody decides to slap on you.